everyone. In this lecture of the endocrine system, we will be covering two different hormones, which are the growth hormone and the melanocyte stimulating hormone. The growth hormone is a hormone that will be released by the anterior pituitary gland after it is stimulated by the growth hormone releasing hormone that is released by the hypothalamus. So once the hypothalamus releases the growth hormone releasing hormone, it will activate the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone. Now there is another hormone that the hypothalamus secretes that will have an effect on growth hormone, which is the growth hormone inhibitory hormone, also known as somatostatin, that will actually inhibit the release and secretion of growth hormone from the anterior pituitary. So it sort of works as a control for the growth hormone. And once the growth hormone is released from the anterior pituitary, it will travel through blood vessels throughout our body and target all cells in the body. So it has a lot of different functions because it will be targeting several different cells. Now the growth hormone, it can also be referred to as human growth hormone or somatotropin. Now don't get somatotropin confused with somatostatin. So somatotropin is the growth hormone that is released by the anterior pituitary. Somatostatin is another hormone, but is the one that's released from the hypothalamus and the one that will inhibit the actions of the growth hormone or inhibit the release of growth hormone or somatotropin from the anterior pituitary gland. Now, when will the hypothalamus release the growth hormone releasing hormone? Well, the growth hormone will definitely be released during development. Therefore, it will stimulate bone growth up until we stop growing right after puberty. But not only that, but the growth hormone is important for promoting protein synthesis. It also has anti-aging properties, which are great, right? Because it will have a role in cell regeneration, in tissue repair, in healing, and stimulating mitosis, which will give rise to new cells. So all these are going to be important functions. In addition, growth hormone will indirectly mediate the growth and protein synthesis by triggering the liver and other tissues to produce a group of proteins that are called insulin-like growth factors or IGFs. And these proteins, they increase the cellular proliferation in addition to inhibiting apoptosis, which, as you remember, is the programmed cell death. So IGF stimulates cells to increase their uptake of amino acids from the blood for protein synthesis, and skeletal muscle and cartilage cells are going to be particularly sensitive to stimulation from IGFs. Furthermore, there's going to be a small effect of glucose that occurs when growth hormone stimulates lipolysis or the breakdown of adipose tissue, and this will release fatty acids into the blood. And as a result of this, many tissues will switch from glucose to fatty acids as their main energy source, which means that less glucose is taken up by the bloodstream. So growing and replenishing tissues and repairing tissue and cell division requires a lot of energy, a lot of ATP. Therefore, trying to conserve some glucose is not a bad idea. This image to the right is showing how the process will work to release the growth hormone. So initially, you're going to have the hypothalamus releasing growth hormone releasing hormone, and this will stimulate the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone. Once the growth hormone is circulating throughout the body, a few things that it will do is listed here. So first, the glucose that's circulating throughout the body will be able to stimulate the adipose cells to break down as stored fat, and this will fuel the growth effect as it will give the body more energy. Growth hormone will also be important for promoting protein synthesis by increasing the uptake of amino acids from the blood. This will also help with cellular proliferation and also the reduction of apoptosis, which is the programmed cell death. All this will target specific cells and will help them to grow and divide and be healthy. And these target cells are bone cells, muscle cells, the cells in the nervous system, and also the immune cells. In addition, we have the diabetogenic effect, where it will stimulate the liver to produce proteins that are called insulin-like growth factors, and these proteins will stimulate even further the growth effects. In addition, it will break down glycogen into glucose, which is going to be important to conserve energy. However, once you start to have a lot of growth hormones circulating in the body, this will trigger the hypothalamus to release the growth hormone inhibiting hormone, which is the somatostatin, which will then prevent or inhibit the hypothalamus from secreting growth hormone releasing hormone that sends the signal to the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone. So it inhibits this process, and then the levels of growth hormone continue to be normal. Dysfunction of the endocrine system's control of growth can result in several disorders. For example, gigantism is going to be a disorder in children that is caused by the secretion of abnormally large amounts of growth hormone, and this will result, as you can imagine, in excessive growth. And there's a similar condition in adults that's called acromegaly, which is a disorder that results in the growth of bones in the face, hands, and feet in response to an excessive level of growth hormone in the individuals who have already stopped growing, but these bones continue to grow. And abnormally low levels of growth hormone in children can cause growth impairment as well, which is a disorder that's called pituitary dwarfism, and is also known as growth hormone deficiency. So the individuals don't grow as much as a normal individual. Now we're going to be covering the next hormone, which is the melanocyte stimulating hormone. First, let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of the anterior pituitary, which it can be divided into three different parts: the pars tuberalis, the pars distalis, and the pars intermedia. The pars tuberalis is going to be the portion that will surround the interior aspect of the infundibulum, which is this little stalk over here that will unite the hypothalamus with the pituitary gland. Now, the pars distalis is the largest part of the pituitary gland, and it will be composed of epithelial cells that are individually specialized to secrete the trophic hormones that will act, as we already know, on various target organs. Lastly, the pars intermedia is a thin layer of epithelial cells that are located between the pars distalis and the posterior pituitary, but it's still part of the anterior pituitary gland. And the cells of the pars intermedia are the ones that will secrete this hormone that's known as melanocyte stimulating hormone. Now, local production of melanocyte stimulating hormone in the skin is going to be responsible for melanin production, and this is going to happen in response to UV light exposure. And the role of melanocyte stimulating hormone secreted by the pituitary is a little bit more complicated. For instance, people with lighter skin generally have the same amount of melanocyte stimulating hormone as people with darker skin. Nevertheless, this hormone is going to be capable of darkening of the skin by inducing melanin production in the skin's melanocytes. And people also show increased melanocyte stimulating hormone production during pregnancy because in a combination with estrogen, it can lead to darker skin pigmentation, especially the skin that's located around the areolas and the labia minora. And this image of the melanocyte shows you these yellow dots as being the pigmentation that is secreted by those cells, which is called melanin. So we all have the same amount of melanocytes, but we secrete different amounts of melanin. And this is why some people suggest to pregnant women that they should avoid being exposed to the sun so that they don't get pigmentation in their face, for example, as this is a possibility.